The Reparations Committee of CARICOM demanded Tuesday an investment development fund to begin development projects in the region. This Tuesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry condemned reported U.S. plans to make new arms sales to Taiwan. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vowed Tuesday to support landowners affected by wildfires in Latakia. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm Gladys Quesada. The Reparations Committee of the Caribbean Community, CARICOM, demanded today an investment development fund donated as a starting point by former colonial powers to begin development projects in the region. According to the newspapers Barbados Today, the vice rector of the University of the West Indies, Hilary Beckles, said that the initial money of this fund is not intended for individuals, as a regional and global committee will decide the capital disbursement to finance productive projects in the Caribbean. Beckles mentioned it as contributors the organizations and institutions that in recent times publicly admitted to having used the proceeds of slavery, even to individuals with accumulation of wealth, as a result of colonization in the Caribbean. The fund will be administered on a global and national level with the objective of sponsoring economic and social development in the Caribbean. CARICOM demands through the Commission of Reparations for a reward to the indigenous and Afro-descendant communities after the legacy of underdevelopment caused by the colonial period. In Bolivia, the movement towards socialist candidate Luis Arce ruled out an alliance with one of his rivals on October 18 election. Arce said that this political organization does not need alliances, nor the support of any right-wing group to win next Sunday's elections. Polls show Luis Arce as the clear winner in the first round. Arce added that the movement towards socialism is the only party that will take the nation forward, and Bolivians know it. Therefore, they are completely certain that on Sunday, Bolivian people will support them. Faced with strong possibility of a victory with at least 40% of the votes and with a 10-point lead over the second candidate, Carlos Mesa, members of de facto government and its media organizations call out the right-wing forces to prevent the return of more-term socialism to the government. And Colombia remains as the fifth most affected nation worldwide by COVID-19, recording more than 7,000 new cases and 151 deaths in the last 24 hours. Today, the South American nation has recorded over 919,000 confirmed cases. Together with Brazil, the total number of infections in both nations represents 60% of confirmed cases in the Latin American and Caribbean regions. Colombia has reported nearly 28,000 COVID-19 related deaths. Antioquia remains as the most affected department with over 2,600 new cases of the infection. The country's capital, Bogotá, recorded 1,005 new cases in the last 24 hours. Doctors in Medellín have expressed great concern of the fact that the city has confirmed more than 31,000 COVID-19 cases, and hospitals are reaching alarming occupancy levels. The Chamber of Deputies of Uruguay approved the 5-year budget bill, and now it must be passed to the Chamber of Senators for the final approval. Our correspondent Mateo Grille brings us more details from Montevideo.
After being approved in the Budget Commission, the Chamber of Deputies of Uruguay passed the budget bill that will be enforced for the next 5 years. The bill was approved by 57 votes of the 98 lawmakers in attendance. Now the Parliament will have this week to vote article by article. The government justified the new budget by saying that the population vote for change.
This bill brings an economic and philosophical model that Uruguayans chose when they opted to change the government. And that's something we have to keep in mind. And not only do we have to keep in mind the coalition deputies, but also the opposition deputies. Because what we are doing, we are facing a new change, a philosophical change that the people chose.
According to the government, the budget reflects an adjustment of the economy that is inevitable, but the main public policies will be maintained. For the opposition, on the other hand, the adjustment will be based on current workers' wages, what benefits the larger economic groups.
Here it is said that the belt is being tightened to Uruguay, and actually that is not the case. The belt is being tightened for the immense majority of Uruguayans, but the belt is being loosened for the big economic groups that are going to have exemptions from the wealth tax, from the IRAE exemptions. For the rich, let's say, meanwhile, all the burden is put on the workers, for which there is planned losses in wages.
Some analysts say that the bill presented by the government is economistic and ignores social issues.
For me, it is market-oriented economy that does not respect the nature that must have a budget that is fundamentally social. I believe that it doesn't know the social purpose, prioritizes the economic, and in function of achieving those economic purposes, the population as a whole is punished.
Once all the articles are approved, the bill will go to the chambers of senators, which will have 45 days for its final vote.
Mateo Grille, TeleSUR, Montevideo, Uruguay.
And we'll be right back after this very short break, so don't go away. Welcome back to From the South. On Tuesday, the Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Zhao Lijiang condemned and reported U.S. plans to make new arms sales to Taiwan.
U.S. arms sales to Taiwan seriously violate the One China principle and the three U.S.-China joint communiques, especially the August 17, 1982 joint communique, seriously interfere with China's internal affairs and seriously harm China's sovereignty and security interests. China strongly opposes this. China urges the U.S. to fully recognize the serious harm of arms sales to Taiwan, strictly abide by the One China principle and the three U.S.-China joint communiques, immediately cancel all planned arms sales to Taiwan, and stop arms sales and military ties with Taiwan. China will make a necessary and appropriate response in light of how the situation develops.
On Tuesday, new restrictions were implemented in the Czech Republic as the country records numbers of coronavirus infections. Starting Tuesday, the use of masks is mandatory at tram stops. On Wednesday, stricter restrictions will come into place, with schools closing at least until November the 2nd, as well as bars, restaurants and clubs. Drinking alcohol is also banned in public places, and the government has limited the number of people who can gather to 6. Theaters, cinemas, zoos, museums, art galleries, fitness centers and public swimming pools are also closed since Monday. To date, the country has recorded more than 121,000 COVID-19 cases and over 1,000 deaths. The World Health Organization said while there is a drop in COVID-19 infections among crucial healthcare workers, it warned that strains face burnout, stress, anxiety and other mental health issues as they mobilize against the virus.
It's the burnout, the stress, the anxiety that we're seeing amongst our healthcare employees and how they have the motivation and the commitment and the dedication to continue in their work when they're faced with these many, many difficult challenges. We're seeing around the world the manifestation of this into industrial action. We're seeing labor disputes and even strikes among certain occupations.
So we conducted an analysis of health worker information over close at 300,000 health workers reported from 83 countries. And this represent the data which are covering primarily Europe and American countries, estimate that around 40% of COVID cases reported to WHO are identified as occurring in health workers.
Infections can occur in both acute and long-term care settings, also in outpatient settings, and infections are transmitted from patients and residents to health workers, but also between health workers. Specific situations that are obviously at higher risk, in particular during care situations like involvement in intubation of patients, direct patient contact, and also contact with body fluids. But also a very important risk factor is inconsistent or incorrect use of personal protective equipment, various types of these equipments. Another element which is really important emerging from recent publications from different countries is the fact that it appears that health workers could get infected also in break rooms, during their social life, in common areas within healthcare facilities, as well as quite prominently in their households.
The French government has said that it will consider all possible strategies aimed at containing a spike in coronavirus cases, including curfews, as President Emmanuel Macron's cabinet debates new restrictions. French ministers are scheduled to meet on Tuesday to discuss further measures as cities across the country record new levels of positive COVID-19 tests. Macron expects to give a television address announcing any decisions made during the meeting on Wednesday. When pressed on whether Paris and other hotspots could be placed under curfew, Marlène Schiappa, a deputy minister responsible for the citizenship, said that no options could be ruled out. France reported more than 8,000 new positive COVID-19 tests over the past 24 hours on Monday, a considerable decrease from Saturday's record of 26,000 new cases. This Tuesday, European Union ministers met to discuss the latest developments in the negotiations between the EU and Britain on a trade deal which should come into force when the Brexit transition ends on January 1st, 2021.
The number of cases has quadrupled in the last 3 weeks. There are now more people in hospital with COVID than when we went into lockdown on March the 23rd, and deaths are already rising. And of course, the very high alert level will apply where transmission rates are rising most rapidly and where the NHS could soon be under unbearable pressure without further restrictions. In these areas, the government will set a baseline of prohibiting social mixing indoors and in private gardens and, I'm sorry to say, closing pubs and bars.
This Tuesday, the Irish Finance Minister, Pascal Donoghue, unveiled the country's 2021 budget, which he said to be unprecedented in both size and scale in the history of Ireland.
This year, while we continue to prepare for Brexit, we are now responding to the worst global pandemic in a century. We live in an era of great uncertainty and increasing risk. Overcoming these challenges in the interests of our fellow citizens is the central task of this government. So I am today announcing a total budgetary package of over €17.75 billion, more than €17 billion of which relates to expenditure and €270 million in taxation measures. This package is unprecedented in both size and scale in the history of the Irish state.
And we have more stories coming up after this final break, so stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. Syrian President Bashar al-Assad vowed Tuesday to support the landowners who were affected by the wildfires that killed 3 people in Latakia and also displaced thousands of people.
We are facing a challenge, and it is to restart production in those lands and keep the people in that region. And this will be through technical support, such as providing plantation seeds and alternative cultivation in the coming years. There are people who are profiting from this and trying to take advantage of the people's needs to buy those lands and use them in real estate.
With 56 new COVID-19 cases reported in the last few hours, the number of people with the virus in Syria exceeded 5,000. The Ministry of Health informed these figures. Out of the figures, some 1,331 people were recovered from the disease, while 4 people died in a day, with an overall of 228 deaths since the pandemic was detected in this country on March 22nd. Faced with the possibility of a peak in the disease, Syrian authorities prepared a hospital with more than 200 beds in Damascus to assist patients nationwide. The Ministry of Health stated that this also implies an increase in prevention measures, since the daily average in the last few weeks ranged between 40 and more than 60 cases. Syria maintains a full lockdown restrictions at workplaces, commercial service centers and religious institutions, as well as in vehicle mobility among the province. On Tuesday, thousands of conservative Muslims marched in Indonesia's capital demanding the government revoke a new law they say will cripple labor rights. The job creation law approved by Parliament last week is expected to substantially change Indonesia's labor system and natural resources management. The new law intends to improve bureaucratic efficiency as part of efforts by President Joko Widodo's administration to attract more investment to the country. On the other hand, demonstrators say the law will hurt workers by reducing severance pay, removing restrictions on manual labor by foreign workers, and converting monthly salaries to hourly wages. Clashes broke into the afternoon when riot police used tear gas to disperse the protesters. In Tanzania, a wildfire continues to rage in Mount Kilimanjaro, posing a serious threat to the flora and fauna surrounding Africa's highest mountain peak. The fast-spreading bushfire, believed to be fueled by soaring temperature and high winds, erupted near Wona Camp, a stopover used by tourists and hikers. According to the Tanzania National Parks Authority, the roaring flames have destroyed a large part of the mountain forest. Pascal Chalutet, TANAPA's Senior Assistant Commissioner, said that firefighters, emergency responders and volunteers from the College of African Wildlife Management have joined forces with local residents to battle the blaze. So far, no casualties have been reported. The United Nations World Meteorological Organization said on Tuesday that there have been more natural disasters over the last half-century, but fewer deaths caused by them. According to the WMO, more than 11,000 disasters have been attributed to weather, climate, and incidents like tsunamis that are related to weather over the last 50 years, causing over 2 million deaths and economic loss of $3.6 million. The wake of heat waves, global warming, forest fires, storms, droughts, and a rising number of hurricanes and the fallout from them, WMO warned that the number of people who need international humanitarian help could rise by 50% by 2030, aside 108 million who needed it worldwide in 2018.
Annually, no individual country is self-contained when it comes to these types of systems and services. They all rely on this global grid of observations, on global models, on regional models, and then finally the provision of services that takes place at the country level. So it's very important that that entire system be resourced.
And on Tuesday, the Portuguese Football Federation stated that Cristiano Ronaldo has tested positive for COVID-19. According to the federation, the star striker is currently doing well and has no symptoms. Ronaldo played in the 0-0 draw at France in the Nations League on Sunday, and also in the 0-0 draw against Spain and a friendly match last week. The Portugal squad was submitted to another round of tests after Ronaldo's results. So far, no one else in the team has tested positive. And we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. Also, you can join us in social media, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Gladys Quesada, and thank you for watching.